So my first question is on the assault weapon ban. Do you think that would be helpful in reducing gun deaths, Director?
Minnesota has suffered untold tragedy in these last few months, and whatever creativity we can use to eliminate even just one shooting, one horrific death, I am in favor of engaging with Congress fully to do. I don't have the answers. I don't know what will eliminate it in its entirety, but I'm willing to engage and explore new ways with you, Senator.
Kash Patel had a moment where he could have defended the Second Amendment, and he chose not to. Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC. P.A.N. Firearms, your NRA certification of multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. If you like channel-like content, what I do here, you can support me with the link. Everything's appreciated. Online store is open. CGB20 will get you 20% off. Got those hoodies and zip-ups. But CGB20 will get you 20% off. Free shipping. Connecticut residents, you got to pay the sales tax. Can't have no Senate matter. Let's talk about this. And there is a hearing in the Senate right now where Kash Patel is under the microscope. And like most of these hearings, it's partisan trash, as it's Democrats trying to play gotcha with the candidate because they all work for Trump. This was no different. But there was a moment where Amy Klobuchar was discussing certain topics with Kash Patel, and she took the time to once again exploit tragedies, which what Democrats do, talking about Charlie Kirk and Uvalde, Buffalo, so forth and so on, where she was trying to get him to openly endorse an assault weapons ban and other such items. The usual stuff that they always want every time one of these tragedies happen, while they ignore the victims of other forms of violence. And I'm going to get into that later. But I want you to hear this. I want you to hear how she frames it. Now, unfortunately, you're going to have to sit through her running her mouth, because she says, I'm going to ask you questions, but then ends up making this speech, as they always do, and a very loaded speech that lends to one side. But you have to watch the whole thing. So let me play her question and his response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have seen too much political violence in this country. We all know that. Just last week, Director, your friend Charlie Kirk was gunned down on a college campus. I'm sorry for your loss. In Minnesota, only 2 months ago, a madman took the life of my friends, Melissa and Mark Hortman, shot Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette a combined 17 times. And evidence indicates that he would have killed a lot more if law enforcement hadn't intervened. Just last month in my state, we were again shook to the core when little kids were shot down through stained glass windows in Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis. And while the victims weren't politicians in this case, they were 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds, the manifesto that the shooter left behind was political. But in the words of your own federal law enforcement, this person was an all-purpose hater. Went after blacks, Hispanics, the president, Muslims, Jews, nearly everyone. And this happened during the first Mass of the year for these kids. They were excited to see their friends, meet their new teachers, and 2 children, 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel, 10-year-old Harper Moisky, were murdered. 21 other people injured, some of the kids, 18 kids, severely. Fletcher was just starting 3rd grade. He loved his family, his friends. He loved fishing and cooking, in his dad's words, any sport he was allowed to play. Harper, the other child, we celebrated her life this Sunday, thousands of people. Her parents described her as bright, joyful, and a deeply loved 10-year-old whose laughter, kindness, and spirit touched everyone that she knew. We've heard the words of young children who were saved because 12-year-olds laid on top of them, or a kid with disabilities who was paralyzed, whose teacher pulled him out of the wheelchair, threw him under the pew, and laid on top of him. We do thank the local FBI director and the local U.S. Attorney's Office for their work in both of these cases, the Hortman case and this. But I did want to focus on one local law enforcement moment that I'm not sure has made with all the news going on in Minnesota. When the first 911 call, and you've heard about other places where this waited and waited, the first 911 call was made at 8:27 a.m. The first officer was on the scene just 4 minutes later, local Minneapolis police, at 8:31 a.m. The Chief O'Hara, shared with me the actual numbers. Listen to this. Over 20 people were in ambulances just 14 minutes, all of them, after the police got on the scene. 14 minutes after the first call. Tourniquets, stretchers, and they got them all to Hennepin County Medical Center or Minneapolis Children's Hospital. And I think it is worth looking at what happened there, because one of the dads whose daughter was severely injured, still in the hospital, that I met on Sunday, told me that there is absolutely no way his beautiful daughter would have survived if police hadn't been there. So it is worth looking at for all of us. So my focus on behalf of these parents, because I promised I would do this on Sunday, was just to figure out how we can do anything to stop this from happening again. So expanded background checks, ghost gun bans, every shooting is different. Raising the minimum age to purchase an assault weapon, even if we're not going to ban them, I favor banning them. But that's one idea that's out there when so many of these shootings are people who are 18, 19, 20, 21. The one at Annunciation Church was 23. Both shooters in Uvalde and Buffalo had just turned 18 when they purchased the assault weapon ban. I'm not saying any one of these things would prevent every single shooting, but I really ask everyone to look at these. We also need to tackle social media, and I really did appreciate Senator Graham's questions. I think we have to protect free speech and not engage in censorship. But for years, I have supported repealing Section 230, which was made when these companies were little companies starting up in garages. And I think it is one way to get at making this better environment online and preventing violence. So my first question is on the assault weapon ban. Do you think that would be helpful in reducing gun deaths, Director?
Senator, if I may, I want to answer the question, but thank you for your remarks. Especially it relates to my friend Charlie, and I share and relay my remarks, my sentiments to you. Minnesota has suffered untold tragedy in these last few months, and whatever creativity we can use to eliminate even just one shooting, one horrific death, I am in favor of engaging with Congress fully to do. I don't have the answers. I don't know what will eliminate it in its entirety, but I'm willing to engage and explore new ways with you, Senator.
Heard that and you saw that. His response was weak, cowardly, lackluster, and I was shocked. Here's your opportunity to defend the Second Amendment, and he just chose not to do it. This is the guy that ran around talking about how he's a champion of the Second Amendment and gun rights, and here's his opportunity before the world to defend those rights, and he chose not to. Now, I listened to what he had to say and the way she was posing it to him. First, she was talking about an assault weapons ban, and he immediately kind of defaulted to, well, now we're talking about legislation.
And so, assault weapon ban. What do you think?
Senator, I think there are instances on this legislation that could prevent future attacks, but I'm not going to weigh into the creation of legislation.
Could you also look at, and I favor just assault weapon ban, not getting these guns in the hands of people that shouldn't have them, but could you look at the numbers on the ages?
Yes.
Because from 18, even going from 18 to 21, which wouldn't have prevented the shooter in Annunciation Church from purchasing that gun. He purchased several the same day. Over 100 rounds were fired from the assault weapon through the stained glass windows. So if you went up to 25, it would have stopped that immediate purchase and probably saved the lives of these kids. But if you go to 21, that is the same age that already applies to purchasing handguns from federally licensed dealers.
Okay, if I was going to be put in that position, and I'm thinking about how would I respond, and she says, don't you think an assault weapons ban would be, the thing to do? And I would literally come back to her and say, well, let me ask you a question. Can you name any of the victims of the New Orleans truck attack? 15 people were killed. An assault weapons ban would not have done a damn thing for that situation. Can you name any victims? No, she could not. I would talk about the North Carolina light rail. The girl lost her life brutally to a pocket knife. What would the assault weapons ban do there? She mentioned Charlie Kirk. Of course they have to mention Charlie Kirk. I would immediately say, well, Charlie Kirk was unfortunately killed by a World War II surplus 98 Mauser in 30-06, which had a box magazine. It didn't even have a removable magazine. What part of the assault weapons ban would have prevented that? And then she went into background checks.
So I prefer another approach, but I was hoping that our Republican colleagues would at least look at that, given Uvalde, Buffalo, and some of these other mass shootings, trying to be practical, but thinking that it could make a major difference. Strengthening background checks, could you also look at that? And then banning ghost guns and bump stocks.
Once again, this gun was a hand-me-down surplus rifle. Background check wouldn't have done a damn thing for that. But she starts talking about threats to elected officials.
Threats against elected officials have increased exponentially. Members of Congress received more than 9,000 threats last year, up from 1,600 in 2016. There's been a lot of talk about the rhetoric and the like. And if we want to move forward on things like Section 230, or even look if we can do anything on guns, I do think we're going to have to be honest about this all-purpose hater issue.
My response would be, yeah, but only 2 of them have actually been shot at. What party did they belong to? One of them has been killed. So with all the threats you claim are going to elected officials, I only see one party who's actually had bullets sent their way. But then they always come back to this both sides argument.
And it has bothered me, this thing, we're going to go after this group, we're going to have to go after this group. I just want to, for the record, show that the murder of Speaker Hortman and her husband, it was Democratic lawmakers on his list. He went to the ones whose addresses he had, by the way. Planned Parenthood was on the list, as were businesses and law firms. Doctors. I already mentioned the ones with the Catholic Church shooting. So it is not just, as the radicals on the left, what's a quote from the president, are the problems or destructive movement of left-wing extremism that Vice President Vance said. According to the Anti-Defamation League last year, all the murders were committed. And I'm not actually going to say this because I don't even want to go left-right with this, but you can imagine it wasn't from the left. Cato Institute, conservative think tank, published a study just last week that found terrorists from the right were responsible for 6 times more deaths than people from the left. I actually don't want to go tit for tat on this, but what I am asking for is that this rhetoric of blaming one side or the other stop, if you could convey that to the president, and that we actually work on things that are solutions.
Every time it's one of theirs that commits one of these violent acts, all of a sudden the rhetoric needs to be toned down on both sides. But when it's a Republican, MAGA, Trump supporter who does some violent act, it's we need to go look into right-wing extremism and white supremacy, and we need to have an assault weapon. It happens every time. When this guy was caught up with, the first thing all the liberal pundits did was run to the internet to tell everybody how this guy was MAGA. 2 days after that, people were saying, he's not MAGA. Oh, he's a groyper. He's a groyper, which is right-wing. That fell apart. Now they're playing the both sides argument. It's bad for both sides. We can't have this. Political violence of any kind. If this guy was a Trump supporter, they'd be all over it. Just as she mentioned what happened in Minnesota with Melissa Hortman. They pegged this guy as a Trump supporter when in his manifesto, he said this has nothing to do with politics or Trump. He even went as far as to say that Walz told me to do it. This is what he wrote. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. But they ignore all that to argue both sides. Both sides need to tone down the rhetoric. Every time it's one of theirs, it's both sides need to tone down the rhetoric, and we need to have a better discourse. But Patel's answers are troubling. This was his moment before the country to defend the Second Amendment, and he failed. He failed miserably. And once again, the Democrats are just using tragedy to prop up solutions that won't solve the actual problem. I bring you back to the recent history, the North Carolina light rail. Here's a man who's been arrested 14 times and let out each and every time, and he kills a woman. I keep telling people, you keep slapping these people on the wrist, at some point somebody's going to lose their life over it. She lost her life. But that encapsulates the whole problem with the Democrat Party. They are exploiters of tragedy and try only tragedies that fit their agenda. But I'm very disappointed in Kash Patel and what he said. You know, he was all gung-ho gun rights before he was appointed to the FBI director. Now he has a moment, a true moment to defend it, and he chose not to. That's disturbing. But let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the next time a video goes live. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.